log on 9:30 tonight.
Okay, we're recording's in progress, so you are muted. Okay, we began yesterday doing the Mishnah on Lamed Vav. Let's go through it again. Just go through it quickly, okay? The Mishnah Lamed Vav on the base. Ein ogden es alulav ela b'minoi divrei Rabbi Yehuda. You can't go ahead and tie the hadassim naravis to create what we call a hashanta with the lulav only b'minoi. You have to use something that comes from the palm tree. Because if you do something else that doesn't, then it's going to be Baal Toisef. You're going to go ahead and be adding on. Because he holds Eged as a mitzvah. He says you can even use a cord. There was an incident in Yerushalayim where the Makiri Yerushalayim, the Chashva people in Yerushalayim who had some money, they went ahead and they bound the lulavim with golden threads. So you see, it doesn't have to be the min of a lulav. Kashan Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda responded, well, go see the end of the Maisa. The Mina Haya the Maisa, they first go ahead when Milmata, they first went ahead and they put on the lulav string or something. And then on top of that, they put the golden string. So therefore, what? It was B'minai. Amarava, Afila b'siv, even, these are parts of the palm tree. Siv, Afila b'ikra, the dikla, even a wooden strip from the palm tree itself, you could use. The Gemara is going to be a raya. Amarava, my time with Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to use what? Minai. Ksava lulav tzarech eged. He also the opinion that lulav needs eged. Lulav needs to be tied. V'maisi mina achrina. And if you're going to bring in other min aside from what? From the lulav, havi chamisha minim, and you'll be over on Bal Toisef. How do I know the siv, the ikra, the dikla, minay lulavahu? How do you know the bast around the tree and the bark itself? How do you know it's considered minay the lulav? You're telling me it's a min. How do you know that? So we're going to have a long-winded brisa, and the brisa, the raya is going to bring in the first quarter of Lamed Zayin Amid Aleph. So we're going to have a brisa, and then we'll focus in. Remind me to tell you what exactly the raya is. The Tanya. Sukkah is taste shiva. You should sit in a sukkah, and the sukkah can be shall kol davar. Now it really doesn't mean kol davar, because when we use the word sukkah, we mean schach. So what do we mean? We mean something that is geduli min haaretz, what ein makabel tuma, because we learn out from the pasuk that said, right, the aspecha, the psoilis of mikvecha from your gairin and from your yeket, from your threshing floor and your wine press, the psoilis. That, and since it's psoilis, it's not a food itself, it's not makabel tuma. And in addition, since it grows, that's where he learns it from. Rabbi Yehuda, I know, ain't sukkah neges ele bedalid minim shebelulav. You hear this? The sukkah, the schach has to be from the dalid minim of the lulav. It can't be. It has to be either from a dasim, a ravais, or lulav. That's what it has to be. That's what it has to be from. Look at Taisus, guys. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ain't sukkah neges ele be'arba minim shebelulav. The less lehadid arshina perakama, you have to say that Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion he does not agree with the drasha that we said on Daf Yomi. But aspecha migoncha miyekfecha, the psoilis goyrin, the refuse of the goyrin v'yekef hakasam medaber. Obviously, it has to be, if you're telling me only from the daled minim, so obviously it can't be from the wine press, obviously it can't be from the granary, because that's not from the daled minim. If that's the case, so maybe you can go ahead and use the Davar Shebekabel Tuma. If he doesn't have that drasha of psoilis, which teaches me something that's not a Mekabel Tuma, it's not a foodstuff. So how do you know? Maybe he says you could use anything, even if he doesn't have that drasha. As I Frek Taisus says no. Nonetheless, Rabbi Yehuda, who does not have that drasha, would be Maida the Mekabel Tuma. Afilu bi'arba minim, going for example, sha'asamehem kli oy peris deka. Let's say you make a wicker basket out of palm shoots. So now it's a kli, it's a basket. You won't be able to put that on top of the sukkah. He'd be moida, since that's makabel tuma, despite the fact that it's medalid minim, you cannot use it. The be'inin dumya, you need the aid. You need it similar to a cloud. If you remember earlier, right, we had anania kavid, and we had the sukkah itself. We said that Anani Yaakov, just the Anan is not Mekabel Tuma, so too. So even if he doesn't darshan, he still has a source for Dav Mekabel Tuma from what? The aid that went up. What about the Maniyam? Said, the Mamish made Sukkahs, lehem Yalfi with the ishkes sukkah chagiga. He has a hekesh from the sukkah to the carbon chagiga. Like we said, it's a balichayim. It's not a kabel tuma. So too, it's not a kabel tuma. So very nice toisus to go ahead and break down Rabbi Yehuda's shita a little more, despite the fact that Rabbi Yehuda says you don't use psoilus from the yekev or the goyrin. Nonetheless, he would be modern on the second halacha of dav makabel tuma, because that he would either learn from the Anani Akovid, the Eid Yalim in Aretz, a pillar of cloud went up, clouds not Makabal Tuma, or he learned from Balei Chaim and not Makabal Tuma. Very gishmak, yeah? Very gishmak. Okay, so now, where does Rabbi Yehuda know his din from? Okay, welcome Ari from Tampa. Ari, we're on Lamed Vav Amid Aleph. We're about 4 lines from the bottom. This is where we left last night. It's a kal v'chomer that the schach has to be from something that's not a kabel tuma. Lulav she'ein noeg b'leilos kibiyamim. Lulav is only during the day. It's only during the day, but not at night. Ein noeg ela b'arba minim. Sukkah sheneheges b'leilos kibiyamim. It's noeg night and day. Ein edin shleitei ela b'arba minim. It only should be from the arba minim. Okay, so guys, now a kal v'chomer usually is to teach me a chumrah, right? What's the chumrah that you could, if madach a lulav is only from daled minim, certainly a sukkah you can't use everything. You have to be machmer. What's the chumrah? The only thing you could use from the schach is from the daled minim. That's the chumrah. Fred the Gemara Amulai, they told Rabbi Yehuda, this is not a good kal v'chomer. Kol din any kal v'chomer she'ata don tchilasei lahachmer. Initially, when you learned it was to be machmir. You can't use every type of thing that grows for schach. You dafka have to use daled minim. That's a chumrah. V'seifel lahakol, and in the end, it's going to come out a kula, as we're going to see in a second. Ein din is not a kal v'chomer. What's the kula that will come out of this? Loimotza arbas minim, right? If you don't find the 4 minim, meaning you don't have schach, meaning if you don't have schach, you don't have a sukkah. You'll sit and you'll be batal. You won't put up a sukkah. What does it mean? The sukkah shall call davar. Guys, the purpose of a kal v'chomer is to learn a chumrah, and the chumrah should remain intact, and no kula should come out as a result. So what's a kal v'chomer here? Madach lulav, which is only during the day, is only daled minim. Sukkah, which is day and night, ain't it? Should be kal v'chomer should be daled minim. So that's a chumrah, but it's a chumrah that comes to a kula. So let's say you can't find schach from daled minim, so you won't have a sukkah at all. That's a kula. You won't have a sukkah at all. So therefore, it's not a good kal v'chomer. So it must be, says Reb Meir, the only thing you can go ahead, the things that you can use for schach is everything, as long as it's ba'asbecha migarncha mikvecha. If it's the psoilus that is not makabel tuma, and it's something that's gedulim in the aretz, like goyrin or yekev, that you could use. Says the Gemara Vayta. Again, we're leading up to a limud that you could use the sieve and the log of a palm tree for schach. Again, that's what we're trying to figure out. In addition, we can see that you could use all kinds of schach from a pasuk in Ezra or Nehemiah. V'chein be'ezra omer, su'u hahar, go to the mountains. They view alei zayis, bring alei zayis, va'alei et shemen, I guess it's like a pine tree, va'alei hadas, va'alei tamarim, va'alei etz avos, and lasei sukkos. Now, fellas, alei zayis is not daled minim. Alei shemen is not daled minim. Yet you see, you could use them for schach. So I have a mufur shiraya that you're not limited to the daled minim. You could use something else. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Hanil defonis. The alei zayis, the alei shemen, you can use that for walls. Alei adas, alei tamarim, the alim of the adasim and the leaves of the palm tree. Alei it's avos, the schach. I thought alei adas and alei it's avos are the same. Now here's your raya. Vitnan misachim b'nisarim. You could use boards for schach. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Guys, we had a machlokes. Remember, we have the gezeres tikra or not, right? Whether you use, if we let you use 4 tefachim, you may come to go ahead one and use the traditional ones and leave them there. Alma siv ikra mini du lavahu. We see that when you're using the sarim, it must be the nesarim like Rabbi Yehuda must be coming from the log or the wood of the palm tree. Guys, since two hachanas, since Rabbi Yehuda holds, you have to use what a daled minim. Any holes you can use boards if they're less than 4 tefachim. Good. So where must those boards come from? Now let's go through it. They can't come from hadassim. Hadassim are not boards. They can't come from they can't come from a rabbi. So rabbi is not boards. Lulav is not a board. But you know what? The tree of the lulav is a board. So what do you see? So since A, I need daled minim, and B, I can use boards. It must be that the board comes from the wood of the palm tree is considered part of the lulav. That's my raya. That whole thing was that one liner. That's the whole thing. How do you know the sieve, the best? And I guess for Huadin, we didn't prove sieve, but since we proved the eights itself, again, Huadin sieve is considered lulava. Shmamina, you have a good raya. Fred the Gemara Kasha, Umi Am Rabbi Yehuda Arba Minim in Midei Achrin Eloi. Does he say Daf Feschach? You have to use the 4 minim and nothing else. Vatanya Sicha b'Nesarim Shel Erez. If you use cedar wood, Sheyesh Mem Dalet Fachim, Divrei Kol Psula, because again you worry about Xeris Tikra. Ein Behem Dalet Fachim. If you don't have Dalet Fachim, then it depends. Rav Meir Paisel Rabbi Yehuda Machsher. Umayder Rav Meir Shem Yesh Bei Nesel Nesel Kamali Nesel. If you have an empty space. Shemaniach pesel b'neim, you put psoila schach between them. Ukshera. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda said what? That erez is okay. Erez is not daled minim. Kasha on your whole yisoid that you need 4 minim. Says, my erez is hadas. Erez means it's hadas. The Amma, take the next words. The Amma Rabba Barav Huna, Amma Amri Be Rav, Asora Mine Arozim. There are 10 types of arozim. The Gemara in Mayed Cotton says, Shnemar etein b'midbar erez shita v'hadas. So you see that hadas is considered what? Erez. So therefore, when it says in Sarm Shal Erez, it means hadas. Okay, very good. Reb Meir said, Afilu b'Mashicha. Reb Meir said that you don't need the daled minim. You can even bind it what? With a cord. You can even bind it with a cord. And then he brought a raya from Yerushalayim. Tanabana, Amra Meir, Maisa be Yakira Yerushalayim. Amish didn't say Yakira Yerushalayim. Amish said Maisa ba'anshe Yerushalayim. This is the Brisa being a little more exact. Makir Yerushalayim, these are the wealthy people of Yerushalayim. The chashvu wealthy people of Yerushalayim. They tied their lulavim with threads of gold. So l'chayr, you see, you don't need daled minim. You don't need min. So Amrulai, they said to him, Mishamraya b'mino haya oigdim. I say milmata. They used milmata. They put on the bottom. They put min sukkah, and on top of that, they put what? They put gold. It says Rashi Shayr. Rashi says that Makir Yishlayim b'mine oigdim esloveyim b'nimsa oged elyon lenoi ba'alma v'loy lahachshem mitzvah. The whole purpose of covering the lulav with this was for beauty. Lefikach einet taisefes. It's not considered an addition. Lavor al bal toisef, to be over on bal toisef. Hastus, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you would taka, it wouldn't have any palm underneath. You would just have the gold. It would be bal toisef. Because again, Rabbi Yehuda needs sarach eged. Amalahu Rabba lahana megadle hashana, said Rabba to those people who would go ahead and who could tie the hashana. He said to those people who would go ahead and tie the hashana, the Bei Reish Galusa in the house of Reish Galusa, ki gad lisa hashana the Bei Reish Galusa. When you tie the hashana, the tying of the hashana means when you're putting the hadassim and the aravis tied to the lulav. Sheyoriba beis yad. Leave over a place on the bottom where I can hold, so I wouldn't be holding the cheshanta. In other words, let's say there is no place for me to put my hand on the lulav without first getting in contact with the hadassim, the aravis. In order that it should not be a chatzitza. Leave me a place that there shouldn't be a chatzitza. Says Rashi. Leave me a place underneath the hashanta. That I shouldn't take it in the place of the eged where it's tied together. He holds the eged is not part of the mitzvah. The army ain't sarach eged, that you don't need eged. In other words, fellas, we had a machlokes. Loi Reb Yehuda, you need eged. Remember, he learned that lekicha from Mitzrayim. The Chachamim, they didn't have a Messiah on that Gezerah Shabbat from Mitzrayim. So therefore, the whole reason they do eged is the shem noi for hidur, for beauty. So therefore, if you hold eged's part of the mitzvah, of course you could hold on to it. It's not considered a chatzitza at all. It's one object. It's one chefza. On the other hand, if I don't need eged, and the whole reason mad is not the mitzvah, and the whole reason is the hidur, holding on to that, I would not be lekicha. I would be holding on to the lulav. The mele would be a chatzitza. So this din of chatzitza is totally in the machlokes whether it's tzarech eged or ain't tzarech eged. If tzarech eged, it's not a chatzitza. If ain't tzarech eged, it's a chatzitza. It's a very important Rashi. So nachamo. So shiarba beis yad, leave over a little space. Ki heichlei tavi chatzitza. Rava Omar kol l'neusa ein chaytzes. Says Rava, guess what? Anything that is lenoi is not considered what? A chatzitza. So even if I hold what? Even if I hold that what that ain't sarach eged, it would not be what? It would not be a chatzitza. V'amar Rabba, and therefore, since it's the noi was done lehidur, it wouldn't be a mitzvah. Again, the Chacham saying sarach eged, so why are you doing it? You're doing it lehidur. So it would not be a chatzitza. V'amar Rabba, another din, leilinkit inish hishana bisudra. A person shouldn't take the ishana with a sudar, some type of a handkerchief around his hands. To be in lekicha tama voleka. You need lekicha tama and you don't have. In other words, if you put around your hand, you tie something around your hand, and you take the lulav, it's not a problem in chatzitza, it's a problem in lekicha. It's a problem in lekicha. You want to have lekicha. Says Rashi. Let's say, spy, when you're picking it up to be yaitza, do not tie the suda that's between his shoulders and his hands, and grab the lulav. Why shouldn't you do this? Because you need lakicha. Now, why isn't it a chatzitza, guys? Guys, why? In other words, Rabbi just told me above, this is the same Rabbi, he told me above that it's a problem with chatzitza, correct? So if my hand, guys, if my hand's on the ishana, it's a chatzitza. If my hand is in a handkerchief holding the lulav, it's what? It's not a chatzitza. It's not a lakicha. What's the difference? So look at Taisvis. The bein lakicha tama v'leka hachalei shayach l'meimar d'loy lahavi chatzitza. Over here, it's not possible to say that it should be a chatzitza. Ki the amar le'el, like we just said before. The le'el mairi kishayeged al lulav. Le'el is speaking about where he's holding on to the aguda of the lulav. V'hacha kishayechach biyadai ubedava karach biyadai. Over here, however, he's tying something around his hands. Ubedava karach biyadai l'shayach chatzitza. Something that's around his hands is not shayach chatzitza. So now, guys, this is Taisus Teretz. I will ask a question in a second. When the object is on the lulav, then it's a chatzitza. When it's on my hand, it's not a chatzitza. So what's the problem on my hand? There's a din of a lakachtem lachem. I need a lakicha tama. I need a complete lakicha. And if something else is there that's helping me grab onto it, it's not a lakicha.
How about min
Hesh, 1 second. So we're going to see other places where you tied something on your hand where it was a chatzitza. Let's see Taisus, continues Taisus. Again, these are things we learned before. But besides Makim Shinagu and Psachim, Dafnan Zayin, Gabi Yisachar Ish Kvar Berkai. Yisachar was one of the Kahanim Gedolim that they cursed. They cursed him, right? Davi Korach Yodei B'Shiroi. He wrapped his hands in Shiroi. Do you remember, guys? He ended up losing his hands. The king asked him, which is better, the lamb or the goat? And the king liked the answer. He saw it was Hayroi. He wanted to chop off his hands. He told him to chop off the left hand, and they ended up chopping off both his hands. You might remember this. So the question is over there, okay, So the chayra over there, why was that considered a chatzitza? I tied it around his hands, the silk around his hands. But there, the ksiv lacha kohen beinin shadei lekicha ba'atzma shel kohen. Afagav the lekicha al yedei davar acher shmei lekicha hanimili derech kavod kidmuch b'sei pirkin gabi lulav shoitzi b'chulu. V'amar Rav lekicha al yedei davar acher. Okay, we'll get this in a second. Mashani hanimili davar kavod aval derech b'zayin loy. Fahashtanami afagav the korach yodi b'shiroi lechavod atzmui la'isa. Pirish. When he put it around his hands, guys, he wasn't doing it for the kavod of the mitzvah. He put around his hands for his cover himself. He don't want to get dirty. He's makbid not to get dirty. Then it's a chatzitza. Mashenkin over here, where it's not hakpad at all, it's not a chatzitza. It's a sarin in lekicha. Heshi, what's your question? Was it answered?
I'm not sure. If you put around the lulav, that's min b'mino. Why would that be chatzitza?
You didn't put anything around the lulav.
Your hand, I understand how you explain it, but
if you hold that eged ain't tzorich mitzvah, right? If you hold it doesn't need a mitzvah, right? So therefore, what? That is being chaytzitz between you and the lulav. It's not supposed to be there. It doesn't have to be there. Okay. That's the chatzitza. There's nothing to do with min b'mino. It doesn't have to be there.
Okay. All right.
Okay, now. So now, one more time. For Amar Rabba, a person should not take a shana with a handkerchief to be eaten lekicha tama v'leka. For Rava, Amar Rabba says no. Lekicha al yedei davar acher shma lekicha. Lekicha through davar acher is good lekicha. Amar Rava, meno aminallah. The lekicha al yedei davar acher shma lekicha. How do you know that what? That lekicha al yedei davar acher is a good lekicha. In other words, if I take something with something else, so I have the lulav with the sudar, how do you know it's a good lekicha? We're going to learn out from paraduma. So Benji, you always say that kasha about where the location of the mechatas was, right? Look at this Rashi. Guys, look at this Rashi. Ezav kotzer. Let's say your high sap is too short. Now we know by paraduma you need to take the high sap, put it in the mechatas and sprinkle. We're using the high sap, the ezav. Shahayu mevi and mechatas me'ir le'ir. They would bring the mechatas from city to city, b'shreiferish shel kanim, in a reed, a tube of a reed, aruchas that were long, umatzniyan oisam b'hem, and they would leave them there. L'tairis tameim, to retire the tameim, umatva le'ezov. They would take the ezov, they would stick it into the water, umaza and spritz. Now, what happens if you're a quart short? V'mhoya kotzer, if the high sap was too short to get into the long tube, kishmachnisay b'pi hasheferes, eino magia l'mayim sheberosh hasheni. So what would they do? So guys, they would tie something to the high sap and lower it into the sheferes to take it out. But it answers your question like I told you. Okay, so now you have an imprint. Okay, so now, Ezev Kotzer, if you have the high sap Kotzer is too short, guys, so it doesn't reach the mechatas in the tube. Misafkoi bechut, you can go ahead and lengthen it using a string, or a spindle, v'toivel, and dip it in, umale, bring it up, for oiches be'ezov, and your hand then has to go ahead and touch the ezov, umaze, and you spritz, right? So how are you doing tefillah over here, guys? Machmes davar acher, the string or the spindle that's allowing you to elongate the high sap. V'lokach v'tavel amachmana. So v'lokach v'tavel. So Ella, so what do you see? You need lekicha v'nasan. Ella lashma mino lekicha de davar acher shma lekicha. So you have a raya that lekicha yidavar shma lekicha. So who adin b'sudar? If you take a sudar and use it to go ahead and shake the lulav, v'lekachtem, you need lekicha al yidei davar acher, will be okay. So again, we have sukkah meeting paraduma, and we're learning halacha. Mimai, what's your raya from paraduma? Dilma shiny hasam. Kivin the chavre, since it's connected, kigufay dami. Once you connect it to the high sap, maybe it's considered the high sap. Maybe lekicha al yidei davar acher is loishma lekicha. Your raya from here is no raya, because once you connected the spindle or the string to the high sap, it's considered one piece. Therefore, what? You have no raya. Therefore, you have no raya. Okay, what's the next raya? Guys, outside, a little bit yediyah. The paraduma, they would take a kli that was made of even, Again, remember, we're very, very makbid by paraduma when it comes to Tyrus, because because of the kula of the full yoim that we go ahead to be yoitz like him, that at full yoim is asa, we go ahead and matam the person, whether the rice, the rabbanim, machlokes from Rambam and Tosfos, the chayra, it's amazing. So we take a wooden kli, meaning a piece of wood, or avonim, not wood, avonim, stone. You put in the water, and then you put the afer on top of the water. That's the key. You got to put the afer on top of the water. In addition, you need koyach gavra. You need the person to physically put the afer on top of the water. Nasa mayim chayim el keli. The mayim chayim has to be in the keli first. Then you take the afer and put it on. But very important, you have to go ahead and put the afer on itself. If it falls on by itself, if a ruach puts it in there, that's not a good nesina, and therefore it would be possible to use for mechatas. Nafal mishreferes l'shaykis. Therefore, if it falls, meaning the ashes that are in one flask, they fall into the water that's in the shaykis. The shaykis is the kli made from avonim. If it falls in puzzle, why? You didn't have koyach gavra. You need koyach gavra. Amid beis. Hahi piluhu. But if he would shake it, he would do it kosher. Amai. Why would it be kosher? He has to put it in. He's not putting it in. It's going in through the shvaferis, says Rashi. If he's miskavin that it falls from it, he doesn't take the afer itself and put it in. He held onto the tube, and he shook the tube. Guys, so look, by shaking the tube, it's what? It's the kichal de davar acher. Yet it is good. So you have a good raya that lakichal de davar acher shma lakicha. So who adin by lulav? You go ahead, you take the lulav with a suda, you pick it up with a suda. It's what? It's okay. Amai v'loch v'nasan rachmana elalav shma. As I just spoke out, lakichal de davar acher shma lakicha l'chayr. You have a good raya. Guys, you good? Geshmak and gemar. Geshmak. V'amar Rava says Rava. Loilodus inish lulava b'hoshana. A person shouldn't shtup. He shouldn't shtup his lulav into hoshana. The dilma natre tarpe. Maybe he's going to pull off the leaves of the hadassim and the aravis. V'avichatzitza. So picture this. You have. They didn't use a kreshigal. They would just tie, as we saw in the pictures yesterday. They would tie the hadassim and the aravis into something. So let's say. You have das marobas, you stup it in. What's going to happen is it's going to disattach the leaves. Now you'll have the leaves being chaytzitz between the what? It's going to be chaytzitz between the lulav and the other stuff. Says the Gemara. The Rabbi Amar min b'mino ain't a chaytzitz. Rabbi says min b'mino is not chaytzitz. So over here, it's not a chatzitza. That it's disattached. It's fine. It's not a chatzitza over here. The difference between you and your min b'minos like batal is your hand. Over there, your hand's not going to be able to touch it because you have something that's not supposed to be there. Over here, it's a min b'mino. It's the same thing as what was attached before. V'amar Rabba lo ligis inish lulava b'ishana. The mishtaya hutza b'chatzitza. Same din, different way. Guys, your lulav is too long, right? Your lulav is too long. So what are you going to do? Obviously, you're not going to cut the top of the lulav. You'd be an idiot, right? You're going to cut the bottom of the lulav, right? So guys, when you cut the bottom of the lulav, inevitably what's going to happen? Some of the leaves that were attached to the bottom are going to get disattached. Now you're going to have them interspersing between what? Between the lulav and the hadassim. You have these leaves that are disattached. The same halacha as we just said, by the leaves of the hadassim and the aravis. So a person, if he wants to shorten his lulav, should not go ahead and do that. He should take it out, cut it, and then put it back in. The Rabbi Amar min b'mino ein chaytzitz. The Amar Rabba says Rabba hadas shel mitzvah asa lahariach. It's asa to smell the hadas of a mitzvah. Asa esrik shel mitzvah mutar lahariach. Wait, my timer hadas to lahariach koi hadas. That's for the purpose of a mitzvah. And what's the das stand for? You're not going to eat a dasim, you're going to smell a dasim. Right? Many of us use besamim, bringing besamim, we use the dasim. Ki aktse, when you go ahead and you set aside for 7 days, what are you setting it aside from? from its main purpose, which is merecha aktsei. Esrig del achila koi, an esrig that the purpose is for eating, ki aktsei, when you set aside for 7 days, me'achila aktsei, you're setting aside for achila. And therefore what? And therefore you could smell it. So in other words, we learned that earlier in the Masechta, that the sukkah is kodesh for 7 days. You can't use the schach, you can't use the walls, right? We said it was like a korban chagiga, asa b'hana. I mean, we had a tremendous amount of chumris of a sukkah and the schach. Who did the daled minim? Comes yontif, person is setting aside this lulav, hadasim arabis, for 7 days. What am I setting aside the hadasim for? I'm setting aside for what hadasim are used for. They usually use the smell. You can't smell them. However, I could smell the esrog. I could smell the esrog. Now, there's interesting halacha, because the esrog is set aside for achila. If it's set aside for achila, why am I able to go ahead and smell the esrog? So it says tafresh nun gimel. Hadash shel mitzvah asla riach boy, aval esrog shel mitzvah mutal riach boy. Why? Min adin el shlefi shenechgu in mevarchen alav im lav yeshlam loya melariach boy. We make a bracha, a nice and reach tevla peiros, guys. And there's a shiloh whether you make a bracha on the esrog. So therefore, better not to go ahead and smell the esrog. Not als the din of what als a sukkah did it din, as a safik bracha stick it in. A safik bracha stick it in. You shouldn't go ahead and smell the.
Ladies, how about yesterday? We have a chananya about eating the esrog, fighting the esrog.
What? But he ate the esrog. Oh, so he made a bari priates. He made a bari priates. He didn't smell it. You're saying that say lachila. How was he able to go ahead and eat it? How was he able to eat it? It's a good kasha. I have to think of it. It's a very good kasha. It's a tremendous kasha. Okay, I have to see. Good question. I'll get back to you. A very good kasha. V'amarava hadas b'mechuba Shabbos t'gedin. Hadasman is connected, mutal lariach, it's mutal to smell, boy, esrig b'mechuba asal lariach boy. My timer, hadas lariach koi, isharis leiloi asal lemegazaya. Fellas, the purpose of hadas is to smell. I can smell it on the tree the same way as I can smell it off the tree. So just because it's on the tree, I can smell it because I'm not going to disattach it. I'm not gaining anything. Masha'enkin, the esrig, which is the purpose of eating, if we allow you to smell it, you can only eat it if it's disattached. Therefore, it would be the esrog al chila koi isharvislei asil lemigzaya. You might come to cut it. Farmer Rava, lulav be a min v'esrog small. You show the lulav in your right hand, the esrog in your left hand. If you're lefty, it's the opposite. My timer, hani tilsa mitzvah. Right, v'hai chodem mitzvah. One is 3 mitzvahs. Lulav v'dasim arabis, and one is esrog. Amar Rabbi Yomi Sukkah. My ta'am loim v'rachinun ella al tilis lulav. Why do we make his good kasha? Why do you make only on tilis lulav? There's so many other mitzvahs there. The Havamina is that since you lifted higher than the other ones, Fred Gemara, if it depends upon lifting, lift up the esrog and make a bracha. No, it doesn't mean that physical lifting. It means growing. It grows bigger. Since it's higher than the other ones, we give it precedence. Okay, I think I'm going to stop over here. Just Motzei Shabbos, we'll start up with a new Indian. Okay, wish everyone a very good Shabbos.